Hello friends, I am Sanket. Our today's topic is gesture using swipe gesture, pinch gesture and rotate gesture. In previous gesture example, we had discussed about the tap, long press and the pan gesture. So now let's try to implement our next gesture. So now create a new extra project. Now again I am creating one tab application. So now just select the tab and now next. Now write down your application name. So now here this is the our gesture part 2. So now click on next and the create. So now here in today's application implementation we will discuss about the 3 different types of gesture. So now let's try to design first. So now just go to your main.storyboard. So now here I am implementing 3 different types of gesture. So now here you can see I am using a tab application. So now according to our third gesture I am using one another view. So now first let's design the third view controller. Now here I am designing a different screen according to our requirement. So now here first okay, now here I am designing one another view for the, so now this is the swipe gesture, this is the pinch gesture and this is the rotate gesture. So now here you can see your first and second screen is by default connected with your tab controller. So now let's try to connect our third screen with your tab controller. So now using this option, so now here let's try to design your screen first. So now here I am changing the different background. Okay, so now here I am using a different background in this application like that. For example here I am using in a black and now I am using it's a white back. Okay, now let's try to change. So now our first screen for the swipe gesture and now our second screen for the pinch gesture and our third screen for the rotate gesture. So now here I am designing a 3 different screen. Okay, now the swipe gesture, pinch gesture and the rotate gesture. So now let's try to implement. So now before we implementing, let me create the view controller of this class. So now here I am creating one new file, the Cocoa Touch class and the last screen for the rotate gesture. So now here I am creating one new class file. So now here first we have to assign this class for this screen. So now it's a rotate view controller. Now let's try to implement. So now it start with swipe gesture. So now just go to the control library and simply search the swipe gesture. So now here just simply just drag and drop on this screen. Now just go to the property of the swipe gesture. So now here you can see the property of swipe gesture. So now it's an important property of this swipe. So now default is right. So now you have to also use as per your requirement swipe right, swipe left, swipe down, swipe up. Here by default swipe is right. So now in this screen I am using a 2 different types of swipe. Okay, means first for the right and second for the left. Okay, now here I am also designing one label. So now I want your swipe value okay on this label. So now here I am designing one swipe. So now here I am designing one label and now set your alignment and change your font size. So now here I am using one label. Okay, now let's design the pinch gesture. So now again simply go to your control library and just search the pinch gesture. So now just drag and drop. Okay, so now this is the pinch gesture. Now let's try to implement with the rotate gesture. So now again go to your control library and simply search the rotation gesture. Okay, so now here I am designing the whole screen according to our requirement. Now let's try to create outlet or action of this gesture or label value. Okay, so now let's start with our first swipe gesture. So now here I am creating first the label outlet. So now I am creating one label outlet with name LBL swipe. Then after, here in this screen I am creating a two different swipe gesture. So now first gesture for the right. Okay, so now here I am creating the action of this swipe. So now this is for the swipe right, and I am creating again a next action for the swipe left. Okay, so now here I am creating the action of this swipe gesture. Then after, now let's try to create your pinch gesture action. So now create, here I am pinch gesture. So now pinch gestures. Okay, now then after I am creating the action of this rotation gesture. So now here let's try to create object of the rotation gesture. Okay, now in this application I am using the pinch gesture and rotation gesture on the image view. Okay, so now here I am zoom in and zoom out one image, and same image will be rotated using the rotation gesture. So now I am using one image view also on this screen. So now here I am using one image view. Okay, now same I am using image view on this rotation gesture also. Now let's try to add one sample image in your project. So you have to use your image view according to requirements. So now here, for example, I am using this image. Okay, so now let's set this image, and I am using the same image on your pinch and as well as rotation gesture. So now let's try to implement first with the swipe gesture. So now go to your first view controller in between. So now our first is swipe right. So now I want your swipe value on this label. So now it's simply I am here LBL swipe dot text, and now here I am just print as a right. Now according to our left swipe, here I am printed one default value as a left. So now whenever you swipe as a right, at that time your label value will print with a right, and if you use a left swipe, at that time your label value will be print with a left. So now this is the swipe gesture. Now let's try to implement our second gesture. It's a pinch. So now in between I am using one image. So now on this image view I want a zoom in and zoom out functionality using the pinch gesture. So now first let's try to create outlet of this image view. So now first simply I am creating the outlet. So now here I am creating one image view outlet. Same it's required in our rotation gesture. So now again I am creating one outlet in your rotation gesture screen. So now let's try to implement. So now here I am using a pinch gesture on our image view. So now it's simply one single line code. So now here your image view outlet, it means here I am using your zoom in and zoom out functionality of your image view using pinch gesture. So now how to implement it? So now first you have to use your image outlet. Then we have one class for the image view. It means you have to use a image view outlet. At that time you have to use a image view property like that. It's a image view dot transform. Okay, so now here for the transform you have to use your zoom in and zoom out functionality. So now we have one class, it's a CG, it means core graphics. CG affine transform dot, here I am using a pinch gesture. So now pinch gesture has been recognized with your screen X and Y coordinates. So now according to here I am changing your X and Y value. So now you have to use this method, it means scale X and scale Y. So now how to get your scale X and it means your Y value. So now whenever you use your pinch gesture, so now here I am using your sender, it means your pinch gesture dot scale, and then same for the sender dot scale. So now here I want the X and Y coordinate value according to your pinch gesture recognizer. According to this X and Y value, your image view, okay, will be zoom in and zoom out. So now this is the pinch gesture. Now let's try to implement our rotation gesture. So now same, I want a image view object on will be as a rotation basis. So now using this rotation gesture, I am using same image view. So now same properties we have. So now I am using, it's a CG affine transform. So now whenever you use, means whenever you move any objects, mean rotate any objects, at that time your rotating angle, okay, this method will be called. So now at that time I am using the sender dot rotation. So now it's simply implementing with single line code. So now here I am implementing the rotation gesture on our image view. I am also implementing the pinch gesture on our image view, and I am implementing the swipe gesture with a different label value. So now let's try to run your application and see the output. So now here again in this application I am using three different gestures. Now first it's a swipe gesture. So now at a time you swipe as a left and the right, your swiped value will be print on this label. Now I am using a pinch gesture. So now using pinch gesture, I want a zoom in and zoom out functionality on this image view, and then I am using a rotation gesture. So now let's try to check. Okay, so now here I am using a right. Okay, so now you can see your label value will be changed as a right. Now I am using a left swipe. So now you can use, so now you have to use left, right. Okay, so now as per your requirement, for example you have to use this gesture for the navigation, means you have to move on next screen. So now at that time you have to also use the left swipe. Okay, if you want to move your previous screen, means you have to jump on your previous screen, at that time you have to also use the right gesture. Now I am using the pinch gesture. So now for the pinch gesture on simulator, so now you have to first select your image view, and then after you have to work with your command key. Okay, so now at that time you can see these two dots are there, then after on mouse click you have to zoom and zoom out functionality. So now this is the pinch gesture. Okay, now I am using rotation gesture. So now again this functionality is also work with your command button with your mouse click. So now here I am using your rotation gesture. Okay, so now I am using this gesture on this image view using. So now this is the rotation gesture. So now here I am using, there are three different gesture in single application: the swipe gesture and the pinch gesture and the rotation gesture. Okay, so now these are the gesture application. So now here in this application you have to create any gesture as per your requirement. You have to also implement different types of gesture in a single view as a requirement. So now these are the gesture. Thank you.